This is what an amazing story does. Captures your attention. It makes ideas stick, creates an emotional connection, and it calls to action. It makes some impact and it makes them do something. Or maybe it just changes their mind, makes them think. That is actually a big action, by the way, to change someone's mind. So this is called the hero's journey. And these are the three tenets to an incredible story. The challenge that is to be faced, the problem, the struggle against that challenge, right? Your main character, maybe a hero, is struggling with something. And then the resolution. How does it end? What do you take away from this story? What do you take away from this experience? Now, the hook is the first and foremost, most important part of any story. This is your attention getter. This is how you reel people in, get them excited. But how do you tell a great hook? Well, the hook should actually be the most shocking moment, or the most exciting moment, or the most emotional part. And then you want to zoom into that moment. Have you ever seen those movies or those stories where you see the main character, he or she is in some terrible situation, crazy situation, and then they hit you with the, hey, that's me. I bet you're wondering how I got here. And then what do? That's the first thing you see, and then they rewind. The first step to telling an incredible story, an incredible hook, is to hit them with a location and a time. And this is very important to do first, because what you want to do is you want your audience to picture something in their mind. So maybe they weren't there, but they have some picture in their head, and that gets them invested. The next part is action. What are you doing? Draw them in. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. You could say something along the lines of, I was driving, I was on stage performing, I was taking the hardest exam of my life. The action, the action, the action. Number 3 is your thoughts and your feelings. Now, this is really where you want to sell it. And what I mean by that is you got to be very dramatic. Express yourself. Use hand motions. Use body language to really connect with your audience emotionally. And use dramatic pauses. The year was 2024. I was a senior in college. And this was the last course that I had to take to graduate. I had a D in the class. And this was my make it or break it moment. I didn't study at all. And I was thinking to myself, what am I going to do? I was thinking to myself, am I going to have to enroll another year just because I couldn't pass this one class? I can't afford that. I was feeling anxious and hot, like there was a fire setting me up from the inside of my stomach. Thoughts, feelings, action, time, location. See how I'm painting a picture now? The next part is the characters in the story. Add some perspectives of other people. Talk about your thoughts and feelings. What was I thinking? What was I feeling? What was I doing? And then you want to immediately introduce some characters. And what this does is add some perspective, and it gives the situation a little bit more flavor. So going back to my example of the exam, maybe I could mention my professor. I could say, my professor said this wouldn't be a hard exam. He said it would just simply be a culmination of the past 2 exams that we did. And if we did well on those exams, then we'd be good for this one. But that was not the case. As I looked from side to side, I saw my 2 best friends sweating buckets. They were thinking the same thing, which is, what are we going to do? But is where you introduce a shift. This is where you really hit them with the conflict. And then you want to rewind and build up to the hook. I have a more serious example, but it works for this. The year was 2001. We were in New York City. I was headed to work, driving to work actually. I heard strange rumblings. Thought, just another day in New York. But then it hit me. The sound of an explosion only a few blocks away from where I was supposed to be at work. I was dreading the fact that I was an hour late to work. But I realized something terrible had happened. And maybe being late worked in my favor that day. So that was really serious, right? We all know the attack on the World Trade Center on September 11th. using that but moment really gives the story a chance to shift, right? That's kind of an inflection point on a graph where everything changes. It's always someone giving a firsthand account. And what I notice is that they always do this. They always say, but then it happened. Everybody knows what they were doing when they got the news of 9/11. The last point is the lesson. How did it end? And what did you learn? There's not always a happy ending to stories. And I think that's very human. It's a very human element, the fact that not all stories end well. Sometimes it's a really dark ending. But even in that dark ending, there is a lesson. There is some piece of information that your audience can take away and they can do something with it in the future. Maybe it changes their mind about an opinion they had before. Or maybe it doesn't change their mind, but it makes them more cautious, makes them keep their eye out. Maybe it resonates heavily with their own life and their emotions feel validated. So these are essentially the 6 steps that you will follow to build an amazing hook and then shift it and build the rest of the story around. Then you're going to talk about the resolution and one big takeaway that your audience can take away. So now I'm going to lighten the mood a little bit. I'm going to tell you my Spider-Man story. This was not rehearsed, by the way. The year was 2007. I was in Khartoum, Sudan, in my grandfather's home, my mom's dad's home. MashaAllah, beautiful home. We have a huge family, a huge, huge family. And our home sits in a big circle around a big field of sand. Let's just call it that. The Arabic word for it is Maidan. Maidan is just a huge courtyard. And it's just all sand and rocks. And the neighborhood surrounds this big pit. Houses, the mosque, the school. Any given day you walk outside, there's just kids playing soccer or driving around or setting things on fire. This was a very hectic place to be depending on the time of day that you walked out there. So here I am, 6 years old, coming to Sudan for the first time from the United States. And at the time, I was obsessed with one thing and one thing only: Spider-Man. So there I was. I was about 12 feet into the sky, hands stretched out, legs not on the floor, flailing in the air. And I felt like a superhero. But all of that changed when I smacked my head on the Maidan, on the floor, on a rock in front of the entire neighborhood. You may be wondering how I got there. Okay, let me take you back. It was another day, just like any other. It was blistering hot. It was 107 degrees. I don't know why my mom chose to take us there in the summer, but she did. So I was 6 years old, and I was a young man, right? I wanted to feel important. I wanted to feel like a part of the community, even though I didn't grow up there. I was bullied a lot every time I stepped outside. Oh, here comes the American. Here comes the American. Here comes the American wearing his basketball shorts and his cap and his this and his that. I just want to play soccer with my friends. And unfortunately, one of these bullies was my older cousin. His name was Salah. Yeah, more than anything, I wanted the approval of Salah. So I don't have an older brother. I am the oldest in my family. So to see my brother, or my older cousin, Salah, to see him be revered as the big guy in the neighborhood who everyone respected, I wanted to be just like him. So every day he'd host a little soccer tournament outside in the Maidan. And one day I decided I'm going to go and play soccer with those guys, and I'm going to be remembered as someone excellent. The one who flew all the way across the world just to play soccer outside. They didn't let me play. They told me I was too short, I was too skinny, I was holding everyone back, there's no room. Oh, we already have an even team. You can't play. I was furious. I thought to myself, how dare they? I'm only here for 6 weeks, and you can't give me a spot on your soccer team? It felt like there was a fire burning in my gut. I hated being underestimated, and I always have and I always will. because you don't make someone feel small like that, no matter how small the 6-year-old may be. So I went home and I told my mom, I told my grandma, I told on everyone, and they said, look, it's okay, just try again tomorrow. No, I was not going to try again tomorrow. I was going to play that soccer game today. So I went to my room, went through my luggage, and I pulled out my black Spider-Man suit. Not the red Spider-Man suit, the black Spider-Man suit. Have you watched Spider-Man 3? There's a black Spider-Man suit. And if you know anything about the movie, when Tobey puts on that black suit, it infects him with a dark, vicious persona. So I put on that black suit, looked at myself in the mirror, put on my shoes. I was like, yeah, this will teach him. So I step outside in the blistering, hot, focused sun in 107 degrees, wearing an all-black suit. And I just start trudging to where my cousin is. And I can see him clearly across the Maidan. I'm just marching. Face mask and everything with the Spider-Man mask. I'm just marching. And everyone stops. And they look at me like this. Who is that? And as I get closer, they say, oh, Salah, that's your cousin. He's coming back. So I walk up to my cousin and I swing at him and I miss. I miss completely. And now I'm just full of rage. I don't even know what the point in coming out there was. I just wanted to hurt somebody like they hurt me. So I start chasing after my older cousin. We're running on the sidewalk. He's hopping up over a fence. I'm hopping up right up behind him. We're running here. We're running there. I'm chasing him down. Then he does this parkour move. We're coming off the end of a ledge. He buckles down and swoops down low and keeps running. But not me. Something in my 6-year-old mind told me, I believe I can fly. And I guess the suit made me feel like I really could be Spider-Man. So I leapt. Now, my feet were not touching the ground like they were just now. Imagine my feet being on the same plane as my hands. Then, boom! I saw a white flash. You know in the cartoons when someone hits their head and there's a lump and you see the spirals and the stars and the bird noises? That was me. And I was sitting there on a rock, bleeding on the head with a big lump, just crying. I felt defeated. I felt like Spider-Man was not coming home. I'm just sitting there crying and bleeding, and people are laughing at me. And my cousin Salah, he actually feels bad. He's kind of just looking at me like, oh my God, what's going on here? So my grandmother, God bless her soul, may Allah have mercy on her, she walked over to me, she saw what was happening, she just went off. Hey, this all happened because you didn't let him play. Just mouthing off on all of those boys, chased them all back home, essentially. Then she gave my cousin a whack on the head and sent him home. And she took me by the hand, took me back to the house, put some ice on my head, and I went to sleep for the rest of the day. And I had that purple bruise on my forehead for the rest of the summer to remind me the lesson here. The lesson is, if you're not invited somewhere, just don't go. So I hope that dramatic story taught you all the importance of recognizing your self-worth and that you can actually fly. We were not blessed with that ability. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. First, I did location and time. I painted the picture. I told you where we were. So you probably imagined, really hot environment, big stone, dirt field. And then I gave an action. I said, there I was flying through the sky, about 15 feet up in the sky, or 12 feet, something like that. What was I doing? I was flying. You're like, hold on, flying. And then I hit you with the but moment. But all of that changed when I hit the floor. Then I was talking about my feelings and how I felt being left out of this soccer tournament. And then I talked about what everyone else was saying about me and what my cousin was saying about me and how they made me feel. So I gave a little bit of character dynamic. And I introduced the challenge and my struggle to attempt to overcome that challenge. And then I kind of rambled on for a bit until I told you the resolution.